Welcome to this episode of Relatively Famous, the podcast where I, Chip White, interview relatives of famous people. My famous relative, Vanna White of Wheel of Fortune. So I think that's my qualification to have this little crazy podcast. Today, I have a friend of mine, Bart Noonon, whose dad played for the Miami Dolphins, Karl Noonon. I'm going to get Bart to tell you more about him. Just to give you a heads up, we are a live comic book shop, so we actually have customers in here, so that's really cool. And I want to thank our sponsors, visitmyrtlebeach.com. If you happen to be looking for the perfect family vacation, go to visitmyrtlebeach.com. 60 miles of beaches, 2,000 restaurants, 90 golf courses. You can surf, you can fish, you can scuba dive, golf, or just hang on the beach with your kids. It's an amazing family place for vacationing or just having fun. That's visitmyrtlebeach.com.
Relatively Famous podcast with Chip White.
Bart, welcome to Relatively Famous. I'm excited to have you on, man. It's been a while since we've chatted.
It has, Chip. So great to see you, my brother.
Cool. Okay, so I'm going to let you really fill in the listeners and viewers on your dad. I know he played for the Miami Dolphins, and he was there during the undefeated year, but really kind of, before we delve into your life, give us a quick rundown on your dad's career.
All right. Thanks, Chip. My father is from the Midwest. He was born and raised in Davenport, Iowa, what they call the Quad Cities. And growing up, he was an athlete. He was a three sport athlete, played baseball, basketball, and football, and was all state in all three. By the time of his senior year, his mother had cancer, and even though he was being recruited by the likes of Nebraska, UCLA, Notre Dame, schools all over the country, he chose Iowa to be close to his mom, who ended up passing, unfortunately, while he was away in college at Iowa. So he went to the University of Iowa. He went in there as a quarterback. His first practice, Gary Snook was the quarterback at Iowa at that point in time, and he saw Gary Snook throw a football. He said, "I'm no longer a quarterback." So he got moved to wide receiver and was very successful at Iowa. His junior year, he was all Big Ten, first team All-American with Gale Sayers at the time, the Galloping Ghost, who played at Kansas as a tailback. So my dad was first team All-American with Fred Balentikoff, was on offensive as well. And that was his junior year. Going into his senior year, the magazine Playboy always put out a preseason All-American team, and my father was on that team, and he was in Playboy on the All-American team preseason, but they didn't have a very good year that year, and he had a pretty good year as an individual, but was not an All-American in his senior year. So going into the draft, the 1966 draft, he had a few teams that were interested in him. The Minnesota Vikings was one. He thought that's where he was going to go. They flew him up to Minneapolis, and he toured the facilities and met with the coaches. But come draft day, his name was not called. So he had a few teams that reached out to him, the Dallas Cowboys, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Miami Dolphins, to sign a free agent contract. And he chose Miami because they were an expansion team. It was their first season, 1966. And in his contract, oddly enough, he did his own contract, and he said, "I cannot be cut until the last cut." So training camp starts the first year for the Dolphins, and there's like 35 receivers out there, and his name was first on the list. And as being cut on the first cut, he said, "Nope, you can't cut me not until the last cut has been finalized." And he continued on, and the last preseason game, a couple guys in front of him got hurt, and he played, and he started, and he caught like 10 balls for over 100 yards and a couple touchdowns, and he made the team. Now, that was the Miami Dolphins' first year in existence, and there were two other players on that team, Howard Twilley, who was a wide receiver out of Tulsa, and Norm Evans, who was an offensive guard. Those two guys, along with my father, were the only three members from the 1966 team still on the team in 1972 when they went undefeated. And God rest Howard Twilley's soul. We lost him last year. He passed away. But Norm Evans is still alive and well, is dealing with some health issues, and he lives out in the Washington area, Washington State area. And my dad had a pretty good NFL career. In 1968, he was led the league in AFL and touchdown receptions, was first team All-Pro in 1968. And by when Don Shula came in 70, he kept my dad around. My dad was one of the only few players, along with a couple of guys who were continued on a lot of adjustments to the roster. And then Paul Warfield came in, and Paul Warfield, who is a Hall of Famer, basically took my dad's spot. My dad still played spots and held on field goals and extra points for Gary Premium, and played on special teams. Preseason 72, he was injured, his shoulder against the Green Bay Packers, and errant snap went over his head, and he got landed on, and still helped the team and coached from the press box and coached at practice with the team, and then retired after the 72 season. So, and I was born in 71. So, oddly enough, I don't remember getting to see him play, but we definitely grew up around the Miami Dolphins organization, and spent a lot of time there and a lot of time with the families that my dad played with.
So, okay, so you're born in 71. His career ends in 72. You've still kind of get this opportunity to be in the Miami family, as you're saying.
Oh, yeah.
What was Christmas like for you as a kid? I mean, obviously the football career's passed, but your dad's still deeply involved. What was Christmas like for you guys?
Well, Christmas is pretty much year round. I mean, anything that we needed. My dad got into real estate down in South Florida at that time, and was doing really well in real estate. But so we had, we lived across the street from the Riviera Country Club. We had a mountain house in Blowing Rock, North Carolina. We used to spend a lot of our Christmases up there. We'd fly up to the mountains and spend our Christmases in the mountains of North Carolina. And hopefully we did get snow a couple times on Christmas, and we'd fly back down to South Florida to resume school. But Christmases were fun. I mean, life was fun. We lived on the canal. Me and my brother had a little boat that you're talking about 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, 10 years old, that you take a boat on the canals. And you can't do that kind of stuff today. And living across the street from the Riviera Country Club, we had our run of that place as well down in Coral Gables. So, I don't know if you'd really say Christmas time, but and Chip, I mean, my story. That's where a lot of the problems began with me as an individual. I've always, it was never, ever enough. Always needed more. So, excess started at an early age. And I had a problem handling that, and when is enough, and that carried on through my life.
Let's just jump right into that, because that's how I met you. If it's cool, we'll be up front. We met in CA in Charlotte. I've got as of 2025, I've got 22, almost 23 years, and we met through the program and became friends. And I didn't know you before then, but I watched some of your struggles since then in that period, and I've also seen your life really change once, as they say, you got it, man, and you did the deal. Run me through that, if you don't mind. I know it's personal, it's pretty heavy, but I don't mind ever talking about it. I know that you've talked about it before, and kind of where you are today because of that.
Well, Chip, I still remember vividly, I'm on January 15th of this year, I celebrated 13 years clean and sober. Cocaine obviously was not my monkey, was with the zoo that I carried around for a lot of years, and 6 treatment facilities later, I just finally surrendered, and it was enough. And I'd had enough of myself and looked for something more and looked to be of service to God. So, I still remember that cooking that barbecue at the boys' Cub Scouts, Josh and Crawford's Cub Scout, and I just had came back into the program, and I haven't picked up since. And I give all that glory to God. And I went and worked at a nonprofit called Beds for Kids for 4.5 years, volunteered there for a year when I laid it down. And then I left that and started West Boulevard Ministry, which is an inner city ministry here in Charlotte, North Carolina, that serves spiritual and physical needs of the families and the communities within the West Boulevard corridor of Charlotte, to the glory of Jesus Christ. So, it took a long time, to get to that point, but by the grace of God, to lay it down and see what God wanted to do, sort of step out of the way and surrender it over. So, my life, I've always thought of, growing up in the shadow of the 1972 team, and we'd get together every 5 years to celebrate that. We just had the anniversary this past or a few years back with my dad and his teammates and the families. It's fair to say that I don't believe there's many teams that are united like a family like the 1972 Dolphins. You go there and you see old friends catch up, and it is a very unique situation for a team to get 5 years to celebrate such a feat, and everybody on that team played such an integral role of it, and everybody's families know each other, and everybody likes each other, and everybody has a good time and can't wait to see each other again, and hopefully we'll get together here in a few years for 55 years. That would be in 2027. A lot of guys have facing some health issues, and we've lost a few. But the 1972 team, undefeated. I always looked at I always thought if I could write a book, it'd be named Undefeated. But it wouldn't. It'd start off talking about the undefeated Dolphins, but it'd end up talking about the undefeated King Jesus Christ, who defeated death on Calvary, and who's the one who saved me. So it's very rewarding. I don't believe I have a job. I just get up and I live every day and try to do my best to walk the gospel out, and I fall short, but I try, and that's all we can do. I do have a couple funny stories that I could share with you, Chip, if you want to hear a story or two.
Absolutely, man. Look, I've shared some of mine, and some of my history because we've talked about it over the years. Like I said, our sons did scouts together. They went through middle school, elementary, middle school, high school together, and your wife Rain and my wife know each other. We all know each other, and we've by the time we met, I was probably 4, 5, 6 years sober. So you didn't get to hear my dark side, but I'd love to hear some of your dark side stories, your fun stories, just the stories you want to tell.
Yeah,
lay them on me, man.
Well, I'll tell you a story I heard from my dad recently, and you'll probably get a kick out of this because you'll know the player involved. We're at Beef and Bottle. This is 6, 8 months ago. My dad said, "Bart, you ever heard the Godfather story?" And I said, "Godfather story?" I said, "No, what are you talking about?" And he said, and it's the perfect setting in Beef and Bottle for him to share that story. For those who know Beef and Bottle in Charlotte, it's very dark. Probably the most famous steakhouse in Charlotte. Frank Sinatra's playing. It's dimly lit. It's pretty cool and very nostalgic. He says, well, there was a restaurant my dad would go eat in Miami called Tony Sweets back in the day. And it was always crowded, very hard to get a table. My dad said that, him and the other Dolphin players and wives would go there and eat, and Tony would just, give you a bill at the end of the month. And, it was the type of place that he wanted the players around. And so one day my dad's in there having dinner, and Tony comes up and says, "Karl, somebody wants to have dinner with you. I need you to come back here on Friday." So this might be the beginning of the week. He said, "I need you to come back on Friday night at 7:00. It's like peak time. So that's Friday night at 7:00. The restaurant's bumping." So my dad says, "Okay, fine. Tony wants me to eat dinner with someone. Introduce me to somebody." So my dad tells my mom, and he goes out to dinner and by himself, and he pulls up, and the parking lot's empty. My dad's like, that's really strange. What's going on? So he walks inside, and Tony sees him and greets him. Hey, Karl, come in here. And my dad goes down and sits down at this booth. And then, maybe 10 or 15 minutes later, some guys walk in suits. And my dad's like sort of at them, and the guys come in. They're sort of meandering throughout the restaurant, looking throughout the restaurant. Then they leave. And they come back in, and they're walking in, and some little guys with them, little short guy. And they walk up to the table, and Tony sort of meets them at the table as they're walking towards the booth where my dad's at. And I think this was probably around 1969ish. So my dad had just had that All-Pro season with the Dolphins, caught 11 touchdown receptions, and they didn't throw the ball that much back then in those years. So he had like 58 receptions, something like that, for 750 yards and 11 touchdowns. So he had a good season. And Tony goes, Karl, I want to introduce you to Meyer. Meyer, this is Karl. It's Meyer Lansky. And my dad didn't even know who Meyer Lansky was at the time. And when he told that story, my jaw dropped. I'm like, Meyer Lansky. And so they talk and they have dinner for like 2 hours. And Meyer says, Karl, if you ever need anything, you just tell Tony, and Tony will get in touch with me, and I'll take care of it. And so my dad goes home, and my mom asked him, what was going on. He's like, I had dinner with some guy named Meyer Lansky. And my mom didn't know anything about it either at that time. And the next morning, the phone rings, and it's the Miami Dolphins. And they're like, Karl, you need to come into the offices. And my dad's thinking to myself, what in the world is this about? Things are going pretty good. They're not cutting me. So he drives to the Miami offices, and he goes in. They show him into this room, and he walks into this room, and there's a couple FBI agents in the room. And they asked my dad to sit down. He didn't know they're FBI agents until they introduced themselves. And then they introduced themselves, and my dad says, what do you want? And they're like, well, Karl, we understand you had dinner last night with Meyer Lansky. And they filled my dad in who Meyer Lansky was. And they're like, we don't need you meeting with him anymore. And my dad said, well, you don't have to worry about that. So my dad left, and Meyer never reached back out to him. But who knows what that could have happened out of that relationship. He might have had my dad trying to get my dad on the hook. But it was pretty funny. I hadn't heard that story. But there's a lot of different stories that my dad would share with me. Some of them I can't talk about because they would not make some people look good. But, growing up around those guys, and we would spend all our summers and winters with the Greasy family, Bob Greasy and his boys. He has Scott, my older brother's age, Jeff's my age, and Brian Greasy, who played in the NFL, was my little brother's age. And my mom and Judy, his wife, were very close, and she passed away of cancer in the late 80s. But just, living and growing up with around that, in that environment, I really didn't know what it was until I got to be a little bit older, and then realized how special it was. Going around and sort of just having all access to everything. And like we talked about before, when it came to my addiction, that sort of set the stage for what it was like for me. I mean, we grew up 2 houses down from us was one of the heads of the Cocaine Cowboys. And one time they came up to our house, a guy was dressed up in a UPS outfit. My mom said that they knocked on the door. She answered the door, and they said, Miss Noonan? And she said, yes. What, can I help you? He said, I need you to, I'm with the FBI or DEA, whichever one it was, said, you need to leave here for a couple of days. We have an operation that's about to go down. So my mom rounded us up, and we left the house for a few days. When we were gone, they came in and swooped in and arrested our next door neighbor who lived 2 houses down from us, who was in the Cocaine Cowboys, who was running a lot of powder in and out of South Florida at that time. And, they had a big white German Shepherd, and I used to play with their son. And I can't remember his name, but it was always weird, I thought, about all these guys that were always standing around. And then
he probably appreciates you not remembering his name at this moment.
And then once I got into that type of lifestyle, I realized what was going on. But everybody's life, everyone's going to face trials and tribulations, and it's how we respond to that. And when it comes to addiction, it's both you and I, Chip, I can count on 3 or 4 hands about the friends that I've lost due to addiction. And I just feel so grateful that I'm here today, breathing, and that my marriage has never been better, that my children are doing wonderful, that our family's whole. I got 13 kids at Camp Thunderbird right now that are in our mentoring program. I got to pick them up Sunday, drop them off on Saturday, pick them up on Sunday. They're there for a week. We're taking them to the beach, Surfside Beach, right outside Myrtle Beach, for a week. In August will be our 3rd annual West Boulevard Ministry Beach Trip, where we take these young men to the same house every year, where they get to experience and create memories. And we just took 8 of them to Washington, D.C. for spring break, and we're at the White House and the Capitol and all the Smithsonians and museums. So life today is definitely full. In my office right here. I mean, I got a lot of pictures. I'm looking around the room of myself, Larry Zonk, and my dad. Signed pictures of a bunch of different players from the Dolphins era. I don't know if I could pick up my. Will this work?
Yeah, we can see that. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Those are pictures my dad took right there. Paul Warfield, Mercury Morris, Larry Little. There's my dad, Norm Evans and Howard Twilley, Paul Warfield, Mark Fleming, Nick Bonacani. I got some other stuff here of my dad playing. Oh, I can't.
Yeah.
Football cards.
That's a great collection, man.
So I keep a lot of different things up here. There's Dick Butkus. Right. I don't know. It's my dad and Dick Butkus in a picture, and I saw Dick Butkus at a Charlotte Touchdown Club, and I was like, "Man, can you sign this?" And it's a picture of you and my dad. He wasn't very nice, but he did sign it, and that was cool. But it's just it's a special memory and a special part of our lives.
Yeah.
It's something that's so unique. There's only that one team, and people always say, do you celebrate when the last team loses? And I'll be 100% honest. I absolutely celebrate.
Yeah.
I don't really. I like sort of being part of that team and that family. And I know all the players do too. I mean, it's, if the New England Patriots didn't do it when they went on a run, they had an opportunity a few years back. I'm not sure anybody ever will, because that Patriots team was phenomenal.
Let's go back for a moment, because I know, kind of like you were saying, excess, and when life, like, all of a sudden you start going down that path, the relationship it had on your parents. I mean, like, my dad, when I finally told him, like, dude, I got a cocaine problem, and he was like, son, don't you know that's illegal? It just, he kind of couldn't grasp it. I mean, alcoholism ran on his side of the family. He understood that. Was there a point where it was really tough when you're in a dad's relationship? I mean, I like you, I've been blessed to I got to be there when my father passed away, not there, but sober for 20-something years of last of his life. What was it like for you in that relationship, and what's it like today?
Well, I'll tell you, Chip, my dad sent me to my first rehab. I remember calling my dad. Actually, no, it was my second. It was my first. The first one I went to was an outpatient treatment program, but this was my first inpatient treatment program that he sent me to. We grew up with that. My parents got divorced when I was 21 years old, and then my dad remarried. He's still married to the woman that he started seeing then, and so my parents were split, and things got the communication got a little lax there, from a standpoint where my parents knew everything that was going on. I went to East Carolina University, went to play baseball, lasted a little over a year before I gave that opportunity away. Like everything else, when it comes to addiction, nothing gets taken from you, you just give it all away. And it took a while. When I went to Hebron Colony Ministries in 2006, which is a Christ-centered facility in the mountains of Carolina, and that's really where I learned the truth about God and Jesus Christ and the Gospels. And my dad got plugged in up there, and he still supports, and he started a golf tournament there every year to raise money for Hebron Colony Ministries in the mountains. And he would bring all the guys in that he knows, whether it's professional football, baseball, basketball player, college coaches, you name it, that would come in. These relationships he would have, and he'd raise money for that facility, and still does it today. And and both my parents, my grandparents were alcoholics, and his father was an alcoholic. So, everyone thought that we might have had the perfect family at one time, but it was anything but that. A lot of I don't think our family's any different than a lot of them out there. You don't talk about keeping underneath the rug, and maybe it'll go away. But I isolated with my addiction. I cut off communication with folks, and I walked away. But my dad, you talk about how things are now. I have this little note in here. Um, this was just from a couple of years ago. He says, "Bart, keep up the good work. Very proud of what you do. Love you, Dad." It's a piece of paper, and I keep it up here on my bookshelf. So, I know he's very proud of where and what's going on today. Um, but in the same right, him and my brother are estranged, and that's due to my older brother's alcoholism. So, you know, addiction addiction does a great job of tearing apart relationships. But then the wonderful things, if you get on the other side of that, they can start being rebuilt, and they can be better than they ever were, even before. I know one of the things I hold closest to my heart is the relationships that God has restored from the past and the new one that He's brought to me. Those friendships are invaluable, and they mean so much to me.
Yeah, the fact that being present, is phenomenal. Like I said, my mom died when I was 19, and dude, I popping a Quaalude after her funeral at the disco. So to be present when my father, the last 20 years of his life, 20 plus years, and being able to be there and shave him in the hospital and stuff, and joke with him and stuff. And being present, as you were saying, with our sons, man, it's like, God, I can't imagine life not being like that. I'm so grateful for it. The when you were kind of deep in it, was it tough on the kids? I mean, Crawford, luckily for me, he was not quite 3, so he really doesn't remember it. He knows about it because we've talked about it, but he doesn't really remember it. I know your kids were a little older. What was it tough, kind of reestablishing that relationship, that father-son, father-daughter, like, hey, I'm here now for you?
Yeah, Josh was a little north of 10, and Lindsay was north of 11 when I put it down. And, for those first 10, for that first 10 years and 11 years in our lives, heck, Rain had a restraining order around me in 2006. I was out of the house for a year. And other than that, I might have been there, but I wasn't present in mind, body, and spirit. I was always looking past or looking through whatever we were doing to when I could go do what I want to do, how I wanted to do it. And, it took time, and time takes time. And, when you have done that much damage, you have to give the other individuals on the other side space to work through their feelings, however they're going to work through them. And whether it was my children or it was Rain, I had to give them the space to do it. And I just needed to do the next right thing. And I needed to not say anything and let my words, let my actions speak for where my heart was. Because Proverbs 27:17, as water reflects the face, so a man's heart reflects the man. It needed to be. I needed a heart. I got a heart transplant. Is pretty much what happened, and because my heart was stone, and working on those relationships with my children, a lot of it I might not have the right thing to say, but I could do the right thing, and they could see that. And building those relationships back with my children, and they've never been better. As I told Josh, I remember one day. Um, I was so competitive in my life growing up. I might not have made grades because I didn't apply myself in school. But if I had a good, football game on Friday night, or I had a good baseball game, then things were okay in my house. Because I was, as a kid, I was a pretty high level athlete. And then, so I sort of, when I got clean and sober, I was so like sports. Because now I was present. I was coaching Josh. He was a heck of a baseball player, but if he went 3 for 4, I'd still want to talk to him about the one at bat that he didn't get a hit. That's sick. There was a sickness there, and it was something that I had to work through. And I remember driving him home one time and from a baseball practice, and I broke down. I said, "Listen, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm ashamed. I'm embarrassed by the way I'm acting, and I just want you to be better than me." And I was like, "You're pretty much already better than I've ever been." at this young age, and I just want you to be better than me. And what father doesn't want their son to be better than them as a man? And he's well on that trajectory. I've never been more proud of him. And when he was at school at Williams, he was a math major, and he came, through COVID and everything. He came home and he's like, I don't want to go into high finance. He's like, I want to go to medical school. And we're like, me and Rain were like, medical school? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I think that's the best way for me to. I don't want to just make a bunch of money, make a bunch of people a bunch of money. He's like, I don't. It's not going to be fulfilling to me. He's like, I want to. The best way for me to serve the kingdom of God is through medicine. And he said, Dad, I learned that from you about serving. And for me, I don't think there's much higher. No one's ever said something so beautiful to me, and it meant so much to me that he said that. And that goes back to just doing the right thing and having your children with you, and you not have to say something that you think they're going to remember for the rest of their life, but they're going to remember being with you. And we're so proud of Josh. He's at Wake Forest Medical School. He's on a Dean's Excellent School medical scholarship. He's on a full ride to medical school. So he's really doing well, and I love him so much. And I people like us, Chip, we can tell our sons a lot of things not to do, and you know what? Those are valuable too. So any fathers out there that are struggling, understand that first of all, get on the right side of things, but telling our children what not to do is also very valuable. And through that, we're still teaching them. So we can use our life experience when we've fallen flat on our face to share those with our kid and have a transparency and openness about that and a willingness to talk about it with that honesty, the how. And a lot of beauty can come out of those ashes.
Yeah,
We both know that.
Yeah, I talked to Crawford, and I like, hey son, look, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I share my experience with you. You're going to do what you're going to do, and just know here's my experience. I can tell you not to do it. And my dad said to me one time, he goes, son, I could have told you not to do it, but you were going to do it anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
And I said, well, you could have at least given me a hint, but it's like I can tell him not to do it, and he's probably going to do it anyway because he's got to have that experience. But being here for them on the back end is the greatest thing. I know we're running out of time. What is the one question, Bart, that I didn't ask you, or the one thing you really want to share with people that we didn't talk about?
That it really doesn't, I know this is talks about our families and them being a spotlight in different times in our lives. Listen, if we're on this side of it and we're breathing, we have breath in our lungs and our hearts beat, that means we have an opportunity. And it doesn't matter what we've done or what we haven't done in the past. We have an opportunity today to make today special. I used to always talk about, like Tuesday or Wednesday or someday, SOMEDAY. There's no such day as someday. Today's the day. And, we all have different people in our lives, in our families, that have done different things. We just found out that Rain's sixth great grandfather was nephew to Daniel Boone, the Daniel Boone. His parents passed away, and my Rain's sixth great grandfather was, his parents passed away. He was raised by Daniel Boone. I think that's pretty cool. But it's about, well, what are we doing today? What kind of legacy are we making today for our family, and what are people going to remember us by? And they're not going to remember us by different things. They're going to remember us about how much money we had or what we didn't have, or what we drove or didn't drove, or what house our zip code was in. It's going to be, they're going to remember us how we treated people. And I think every one of us can make God stand up and say, that a boy, way to go in the way we treat people. So, but it's also treating people with accountability and responsibility, and loving on them a certain way, very intentionally, but having some guardrails in place. So I don't know if there's really a question, but there's hope out there, and a lot of times people live in a hopeless situation. But make the next right move, and just worry about where that next foot's going, and then after that, the next foot. And there's a way out for all of us, and for a guy like me, there was one way out, and that was through the cross. The cross of Jesus Christ. So, I never thought, I'd look around at church and be like, God, is that what I'm going to be like? Or is that how it's going to be? But it's about intentional relationship with God and what that looks like for you. I mean, listen, I still end up saying a bad word here or there, or getting upset. I mean, you've heard it before. Churches is like a hospital for sinners, not for saints. And I go to church on Sundays and I get the word from David Chadwick, my pastor and my dear friend, and who gives it to me. But I get my God and my Jesus out here on the streets by serving, and that's where I feel connected. So I would just encourage anybody that's struggling to, find your path, but it will reveal itself to you what it's about. But get out of yourself and get into somebody else.
That's awesome. Your dad laid an amazing legacy, and I think, as you said, he's going to be super proud of the legacy that you're leaving. May not be football, but you're leaving an amazing legacy behind. Bart, man, thank you so much for your time. Please tell Rain and Josh and everyone we said hey, and hopefully we'll get to Charlotte at some point and have a soda together.
Amen, brother. You know where to find me. I'd love to get you over here and show you around over here at Gracie's house at West Boulevard Ministry. And tell your crew I said hello.
I will do the same. Email me the link to the ministry. We'll put it up on our show notes and everything also. And again, thanks for your time, Bart. It's been amazing catching up. And again, hey, congratulations, dude. Let's just keep doing the deal.
Thank you, Chip. Appreciate you, brother. Much love.
You too. Hey, I highly suggest that you Google Bart's dad, Karl Noonon, and find out about his career. I mean, Bart covered a lot, but it's always good to Google the person. I want to thank Bart for being on. I want to thank our sponsors. Visit myrtlebeach.com. If you're looking for the perfect vacation, go to visitmyrtlebeach.com. If you travel with an autistic or autism or sensory sensitive child or an adult, check out Traveling the Spectrum on Peacock. It's brought to you by visitmyrtlebeach.com also, and they represent us also. Visit myrtlebeach.com. I want to thank Nelco Media for producing our podcast. I want to thank Nelco Comics for the cool location. Again, we're a live comic book shop. People are in here buying right now. Looking for a crazy comic book? Nelco Comics in San Antonio. If you happen to be related to someone famous or know someone related to someone famous, reach out to me at podcastrelativelyfamous@gmail.com. Podcastrelativelyfamous@gmail.com. And I truly, humbly want to thank you, the listener and the viewer, for being a part of this show. Thank you.
You've been listening to Relatively Famous with Chip White. Please like and subscribe to Relatively Famous with Chip White.